And I ran into a video called Stop Making Clone Games by a pretty big content creator named YourBudTevin. I'm not following or subscribed to him or anything, but I have seen the video, and I've seen a counterpoint retort video, which I happen to see first. And basically the argument of the video is against Marvel Rivals being too close, too similar to a game like Overwatch. While I can already say that there's some things in there that I disagree with in that, because there's no hero switching. Oh yeah, this guy, yeah, there's no hero switching, so you could probably say it's closer to Paladins than it is to Overwatch. You get to keep ult between rounds, unlike Overwatch, so once again, closer to Paladins than it is to Overwatch. And the heroes vary in verticality very heavily, and that's not something that most Overwatch heroes can do, right? So, as you can see, we have someone comparing the market leader of team shooters, of hero arena shooters, to an open beta or a closed beta for Marvel Rivals, which is a new shooting game coming in 2025. The name of the video is Stop Making Clone Games, and I absolutely disagree with the video. You guys can go watch it for yourselves if you would like to, see if there's any points you agree with, but the vast majority of the time I'm going to disagree with anyone who says that clones are bad. I want to talk about some clones when it comes to gaming, and why I think clones are good. For the easiest example, we can look at one of the most popular fighting games of all time that more than likely spawned a good amount of clone games. There's one in particular I want to look at, but the game that I'm thinking of immediately is Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat has a bunch of rip-off, spin-off, shitty clone games that sunk dead in the water, that didn't do too hot, that didn't really make an impact or a splash. But there was one that stood above the rest and lived for a long time. Didn't have too many entries, but it spun off into its own thing that made another type of game, another franchise in a market where we don't want only one market leader, which I'll get into the fact that we don't want one market leader for anything. Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct was originally just a clone or a rip-off game, a game spiritually thought of as like Mortal Kombat adjacent. And then it became its own series by adding new features, by changing up the combo system, by creating different styles of characters that don't look similar to Mortal Kombat characters at all. Jago, as you can see in this picture, Jago looks very similar to a Mortal Kombat ninja in this picture. But as you see in in Killer Instinct 2014, 2013, look at these characters. The models for the characters look so much different now, and it has its own art style, its own personality, and its own gameplay. Every fighting game would have been at some point considered a rip-off or a spin-off, a rip-off or a clone of Street Fighter. Because Street Fighter, at one point, was the only major fighting game and the market leader for fighting games. Now when you ask people, what's their favorite fighting game, you normally hear one of three: Tekken, Mortal Kombat, or Street Fighter. Well, I can go ahead and tell you that everyone gets their inspiration from somewhere, and Tekken was not originally the market leader of 3D fighters. It's not even the first major 3D fighter. That title goes to Virtua Fighter, which only had 3 buttons, punch, kick, and guard, and was built on a different style of 3D engine, but it became the inspiration for Tekken and the 3D fighting games that dominate the space as we have today. Clone games, generally, are a good thing. Clone games usually end in one of two ways. Clone games either A, sink in the water and die because they're bad games, or they live long enough to create competition for the game that they were being cloned off of, or that they were ripping on. You could look at games like Call of Duty. Call of Duty was not the original World War II shooting game. Call of Duty copied their homework from Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor was originally the market leader. Call of Duty became so good and so prevalent in the shooting game space that it even surpassed games that are not similar, like Halo, when Modern Warfare 1 came out. The original Call of Duty Modern Warfare started to shift the genre of World War II FPS genre games to try to shift their way into the modern era of shooting games. Medal of Honor doing World War II games and tried their hand at two modern shooting games during the Xbox 360 era. Did it work? No. So unfortunately for us, Call of Duty is still the market leader. But those spin-off games or those rip-off games could have given Call of Duty more competition so that they would have had to adjust the way that they're designed and the philosophies behind them to broaden their scope of the players that they would appeal to. That is what you're looking for when it comes to clone games. Right, I've been playing recently a new little shooting game on phone and on Nintendo Switch called Star Wars Hunters. Star Wars Hunters is a 4v4 hero arena shooter. Very simple. And some people would probably, at some point, categorize it or classify it as an Overwatch-like. Once again, can't switch heroes, so probably closer to Paladins. But people would compare it to Overwatch, because Overwatch is the market leader. And if you're going to do that, then that means that you have to think about the fact that all the things that Overwatch does better than a game like Star Wars Hunters, or than a game like Marvel Rivals. And then you have to think about the things that those games do better, and which ones feel more important to you as a consumer. Game design doesn't matter more than the philosophy of how willing they are to adjust to their players. Because these games now, most of the time, unfortunately, are live service, which means that they're not putting out a shitty product and leaving it shitty forever, or a good product and leaving it good forever. They are catering to their most common denominator of an audience, generally, or they're making decisions fully based off of their own internal testing and teams, and that's how we end up with Overwatch being the market leader, but everyone's still somehow complaining about it. Going with the status quo, knowing the status quo isn't where you want it to be, seems kind of foolish. And that's why I like clone games. I don't think Multiverse is inherently a clone to Super Smash Bros., but it is another genre-adjacent game. It's a platform fighter. But if there's things that Smash in the future takes away from Multiverses because of Multiverse's potential success, I would be happy with that. That would mean that they viewed Multiverses as competition enough to change up the formula because they were afraid of bleeding players to it. Competition is good, and clones breed competition. Only the best of them. Tell me in the comments how you guys feel about clone and rip-off games. If there's any cool ones that you know of, leave them down in the comment section down below as well. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully we'll get to 1,000 subscribers one day soon, so we can make that mucho dinero on YouTube. Anyways, this has been Being Sluggish for the YouTubes, signing out and saying peace. Please don't clone me.